we can use the topic and then we can go with the interpretation that we sort of deduce from inspecting what the topic actually means, what we want from the topic. So if at first the topic was,
sure, God exists, but why the triune God?
Yeah, and I think the question of asking why the Trinity, why we believe that. That is our assistant. But I think the issue with asking that question is, for me, assuming that most people believe in that type of God. Why assumes that all people, not only Christians, believe in God, but in 3 different forms.
I think I'm the opposite. I think when you're saying why the triune God, you're assuming that everyone doesn't believe, but you're asking the people who do believe, why the triune God? Why do you believe in the triune God? It's not like why the triune God is the right God. It's why do you believe that the triune God is the right God? So it's more of like subjective reality rather than objective.
Yeah. So, but then I think that question is not, I wouldn't say it's not as thought-provoking, because it definitely causes people to do a lot of introspection in terms of what they believe in. But I don't think it's as, I think it can be explained with a bit of research. A bit of research, a bit of going back to the basics, I think it can be explained.
The point is, we're supposed to come up with the conclusion, why the triune God, without having to do any research. Just off the top of our heads.
Alright.
So Nani, why the triune God?
Okay.
Do you want to start?
I do not want to start.
Okay, well,
We'll let Pranav start.
here's the thing.
We'll let you start. Yeah, I can go next.
Why I believe in the Trinity, essentially. So a little bit of backstory for the listeners.
Yeah.
I was not raised a Christian. I was raised a Hindu. Both my parents are Hindus. My sibling is a Hindu. And one thing I must admit about, especially, I think I'm 4th, 5th generation Indian, coming from India, is that we're very disconnected with our religion, which is part of the reason why I didn't believe for around 4 years. I was an unbeliever. And the reason for that is because, like I said, we were so disconnected with our culture. I find that many Indians today who claim to be Hindus, if you spoke to them and asked them, when you go and pray from the land, who do you actually pray to? What does he actually believe? What does he require of you? What does he expect of you? They won't be able to answer that because they're so disconnected, but they just know by tradition, I have to go pray from the land. Which is why I feel like I branched away, and then when I found Christianity somewhat maybe I'd say 8 months ago, I felt a lot more connected because I found a religion that was based on forgiveness. A whole religion based on forgiveness. And what really converted me was
my edit.
That's probably a common factor.
It was a common factor. His edits, yeah. I mean, he can plug himself eventually.
Yeah.
His edit and learning about Jesus is what converted me. And I asked myself the question, I was very resistant to believing that whenever you didn't have an explanation for something, jump into the... Actually, I want to ask you about this. Okay.
Sure. Yeah.
So you say, we spoke about this earlier, but I think we should just mention it again.
Yeah.
We spoke about how because God wanted it to be. You said in terms of making it look like Jesus was crucified, what Islam's belief was God made it to look like.
Yeah.
You found that as a very lame excuse. It's very easy.
I did.
It's very easy to resort to because it's like no further questions asked.
Yeah. It's God.
It's God. You can't cross that line.
Yes.
And I was very resistant to the idea of attributing everything that I didn't understand to God.
Yes.
Because I was often reminded about the examples and the times when we did that and we later found an explanation. Even today we might find it silly. For instance, a rainbow, not God, but we probably said, some Irish dude was sitting there with a pot of gold, right? Or lightning or storm,
Yeah.
So attributing stuff we don't understand, and then comes to the question now with, we know that there's a beginning to the universe.
Yes.
So attributing God
Yes.
to the cause of the beginning of the universe, what do you think that says about, how do you think that sort of reflects what we did back with, let's say, rainbows or lightning, or other stuff like that?
It's a very interesting question because I was watching a pod with Alex O'Connor. And he's literally become my favorite atheist. But which is a bit weird to say.
That's a quite ironic.
Yeah, it's a bit weird to
Ironic
say,
thing to say.
but he is my favorite atheist. And basically what he was saying is the arguments that he has for atheism, like divine hiddenness, why God is so hidden from us, the problem of evil, those two main arguments for atheism. He doesn't see someone in the future traveling through time and going back and saying, these guys, they haven't figured out the problem of evil, or they haven't figured out divine hiddenness. But he thinks that with the arguments for religion, like for example, the first uncaused cause, or the universe has a cause, those things, us attributing that to God, he thinks that there's a possibility that in the future someone might think, oh, these guys were so stupid, how could you have not known that this is actually the cause of the universe? So it is quite interesting that we attribute certain things to God that we don't
Stuff
understand.
we don't understand.
Stuff we don't understand. And the thing is, I think it's important to understand our definition of God. Because, for example, there's a guy named Anselm, and he has an ontological argument. The point of the argument is, if the fool, the test subject, the fool, believes that God is greater than which can be conceived, that is the definition of God, then the fool can not only believe in God as in him only existing in the mind. Because if we can understand that something existing in reality, so a tiger existing in reality is more powerful than a tiger existing in the mind. So if the fool only believes in God in the mind, then that's false, because how can he be greater than can be conceived? But there's a possibility that a God in reality is greater. Doesn't make sense. It's absurd, right? So I think because of our definition of God, it makes sense that the cause is God. He exists outside of time. He exists. I was telling Nani
But
the word.
he doesn't exist out of conception.
What do you mean?
You can conceive.
Firstly, how would you
Can we conceive?
How would you define God? Would you agree with the previous statement that you said?
I would agree with greater than can be conceived. There's some aspects of God that we can try and quantify and understand. Like he's all loving, he's all powerful, but actually truly understanding God, I don't think we can. We cannot conceive God. So I would agree with the definition of God that we currently have. Okay. But yeah, there's a bit of an
So you think because God exists outside of reality, he is the only plausible cause for something that is real.
yes. And the main reason for that is, and this is the argument of, what is it called again? Like fine tuning, the fine tuning of the universe and everything like that. I mean, there has been a counter argument for that, which is if we're saying that gravity and all these things are specifically this measurement, anything a bit above or a bit below will exist. Because of that, then we know that the creator is of a great mind. The counter argument to that is, even if there were universes where it was a bit above, a bit below, we wouldn't be able to observe it because they wouldn't exist.
I agree a lot with that counter argument. We are a manifestation of the right conditions, not the other way around.
Yes.
We do not determine the conditions determine us.
Yeah. So then, does that mean that there have been multiple universes that have
It
not
means there have
survived?
been multiple planets. they don't have the right conditions, and they also don't have life.
Interesting.
So we're just going to exclude the Martians.
The Martians, although they did visit me last night,
They don't exist. They don't
they
exist.
don't exist. But they could have happened, I think.
Because if you're going with that argument, you could assume that, okay, let's say the planets, right? They do not have life. And they have all these different conditions. That could mean that there's a possibility that there are infinite universes and planets that have
I mean, I don't think there's
unlivable conditions. Let's say.
I don't think there's infinite planets because we just agreed that the universe has a beginning. So if time is finite, I'm pretty sure planets are finite too.
If the universe has a beginning, then where was this whole process of elimination?
What do you mean?
As in, we have this earth now that we're living in, that is living. Then, where was this process of elimination of, okay, this earth is unlivable, this earth is unlivable. And I mean, we have our planets that we have, but why is it the specific number of planets that we have?
What I'm saying is, in order for there to be an infinite amount of planets, there has to be an
Yes.
infinite amount of time.
Does it?
Yeah.
If I have,
Infinite does not mean uncountable.
What does it mean then? Never ending.
Never ending.
never ending.
They are uncountable infinities, but infinite does not mean uncountable. By current methods, we can't count.
Yeah.
But if there was some, if God could count,
God
could count.
God could count.
God could count. God has the number.
Okay,
Whatever that
so
number is.
the thing is, we're still not answering the main question.
Yeah, I was just about to say we've
It's not answering the main
sidetracked
question.
ourselves a bit.
We're still not
It
answering
is
the
the
main
20-minute part.
We have about 8 minutes left. Yeah, boss
we
will be
don't.
hearing us soon.
We have 4 minutes left.
We have 4 minutes left.
Yeah, spared matters.
Yeah, I was looking at the 12 minutes.
Oh, okay.
Okay, well, the question still is, why the triangle? That's still the question.
Okay.
And what you've said is, which is an interesting point, is that we tend to just attribute things that we don't understand to God and say, oh, it's God. Who created the universe? God. Who resurrected Jesus from the dead? We can't really explain like how that actually happens. Who did that? God. We tend to just attribute God to all these things. But why does God? I have a kind of a theory. And
Go for it.
it's
Go for it. Yep, we have,
it has to do
we have
with
4 minutes.
it has to do with relationships as human beings. You know, how can I know that I have love if I don't have someone else to say that, okay, I love this person? You know, I think that's where love is created between multiple people.
Yeah.
And even if you say that you love yourself, you're kind of like
That's
separating yourself.
That's great. Yeah,
You kind of
you're
separate
making two
yourself.
different entities.
Exactly.
As well, yeah. Which is God. Just say.
Exactly.
That is fair.
Exactly.
That's fair to say.
Yeah. So
That's what I think. I think that if God is all loving and He's a creator of love, then I think that it would make sense that He has someone to share that love
so
with.
you think in order for him to derive the concept of love, there had to be entities where he can experience love between. So he had to experience love between these 3 different entities in order for him to translate that onto us. Is that what you're saying?
Not that He had to experience the love in order to
But love
translate
doesn't
it.
exist without.
Yeah, that's what I think. Love doesn't exist
By definition.
without multiple parties.
Okay.
That is the main theory that I have.
That's very poetic. Is it true? I don't know.
Is it true? Yeah.
That's making
the question.
Shakespeare.
That's the whole point, right?
No.
Just
Yeah, it's
speaking out of our minds.
Yeah, it's poetic.
We may later do some research and find out that we're completely wrong.
But the obvious reason why we believe this is because of the Bible.
Yeah,
The Bible says it.
Bible says it.
The
Yeah.
Bible says.
But we need to try and find a way to prove what the Bible says without using the Bible.
That's important.